Good afternoon, everyone. So happy to have you all here today. My name is Kristen Rivera. I will be the presenter for the next hour. And before we begin, I just want to ensure folks that this meeting will be recorded. Please feel free to engage by using the chat box or the raise hand feature. I will be sharing my screen throughout this presentation today, so I apologize if I miss any raised hands or any comments in the chat. We do have Casey here with the N.A.P.S network, who will also be here to support. So again, please feel free to grab waters, coffee, stretch. We will begin. I'm going to share my screen, and then we could start with some introductions. Thank you. Oh, I realized I was muted. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our training series today. Thank you again to N.I.P.S and N.A.P.S for hosting all of us here. Okay. So again, my name is Kristen Rivera. Today we're going to talk about exploring career paths for peers. So a little about me. I am from New York State, born and raised. My pronouns are she, they. And if folks are interested in connecting after today, I'll share my contact information later on in the presentation. So I want to do a quick overview of what to expect throughout today. We're going to begin with some introductions. I'm going to overview the objectives, the learning objectives for today, introduce or reintroduce some historical influences to career paths for peers. And then we'll really get into some fun activities about career exploration. So we'll talk about personal experience, accessing benefits and risks, and some helpful tools we can use along the way. And then lastly, we're going to wrap up today with some reflection discussions and a gentle reminder of the quiz, which will be shared after today's training. If folks have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat or reach out to Casey Carpenter, the program director for N.I.P.S, to address those questions. All right. So our learning objectives for today, we're going to identify some historical influences for the employment of persons with lived or living experiences, also known as peers. We're hopefully going to understand the role of peer credentialing pathways and its relationship with employment. We're also going to raise some awareness of tools and skills that can assist with identifying benefits and risks to career exploration for peer roles. Okay, so before we begin with our historical influences, I did want to take some time for folks to introduce themselves. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. If you can, I'll welcome some time for folks to share their name, pronouns, and possibly your specialties around the field. Please feel free to use the chat box if you're unable to come off mute. If you'd like to come off mute, I ask that you use the raise hand reaction like this. And we'll just take a few moments to go around the room. Anyone like to start? I'll also just read off the chat box as well. So Samuel, thank you for chatting in. It says, will we get access to the slides, and can any resource also be placed in the chat? Yes, this meeting is recorded, so you will have access to the slideshows as well as the live recording of this meeting. In terms of resources, I can look to send those to Casey, and then Casey will distribute them to folks interested. All right, and I see Susan with a hand raised. Go ahead, Susan. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm Susan. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I actually still have my certification, but have not ventured into working. So I am here to get some guidance and thoughts and ideas of steps I can take to start practicing as a peer support provider.
Great, Susan. Welcome. I see Shandy.
Good afternoon. My name is Shadi Speller. I am a family peer advocate for 2 community residences in Westchester County, New York.
Thank you, Shandy. Appreciate you being here. And then I see Stephanie.
Hey guys, I'm Stephanie Blue. I am a certified peer recovery specialist. I'm from Westchester and I work in the boroughs, including on Long Island. And I enjoy what I do.
We're happy to have you, Stephanie. Thank you. And just to read some from the chat box here. So we have Casey. Hey, Casey. We have Lynn. Thank you, Lynn, for being here. Samuel, thank you for your question. Crystal, welcome. Toyin, welcome. Katie, nice to meet you. And Danielle, we're happy to have you. And then I see a hand raised for Ann. Go ahead, Ann.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Casper, and I am a global mental health advocate. So I moved to New York City last year, and it took me like 6 months to get certification because I kept losing they lost my information. So I don't know where I'm landing in New York City, and happy to work with everybody.
And New York is happy to have you, Ann. Okay, and then I see Gloria with a hand raised.
Hi, everybody. My name's Gloria K. Loon. I am a certified peer specialist and I received a scholarship from Friends of Recovery and going through SERPA training right now, January to the first weekend of February. And I just got approved on the Hey Peers website to be a peer. So I have a lot of resources and I just started to branch out. So thanks for letting me share. Appreciate everybody here.
Happy to have you, Gloria, and congratulations on this new journey. And then Jen.
Hello, I'm Jennifer. She, her pronouns. I am from the Mental Health Empowerment Project over here in Albany, born and raised in the Bronx, so so I'm familiar with the downstate area. But I am the regional coordinator and trainer on the training team here. So it is wonderful to be here and to see you again, Kristen and Casey. I'm looking forward to this.
Lovely to see you too, Jennifer. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Okay, if anyone would like to raise your hands, please feel free. If not, we could still use the chat box here. Megan, welcome. And Howard, also good to have you here. All right. So as we mentioned, today is going to be a little bit about discussion, a little bit about skill building. If anyone has any questions or concerns, please feel free to take breaks or write them in the chat. We will try our best to address them. And of course, you can always reach out to Casey or myself after today's meeting for further insight. All right, with that, I'm going to share my screen again. So please bear with me, y'all. Okay. Awesome. If somebody could give me a thumbs up reaction or type it in the chat that you can see the screen, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, can folks see, or just in the chat, could somebody send a thumbs up, please?
We
Or an
can see it.
emoji? Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry, y'all. I'm like, I can't see everybody as I'm presenting. I'm hoping I could fix that soon, but okay. So just to begin briefly, want to go over what happened that created this workforce of peer advocates and peer support specialists. A few things, right? As his story is written, it's never just one moment. It's usually a group of people that come together to advocate for change and then solidify that change. Some of the people who did that were advocates, family members, individuals directly impacted by systems who wanted to get together and make change for the better. So we had the rise of some national movements. This includes the disability movement, civil rights and human rights movement, as well as the consumer movement, which we now know as the peer movement. So again, folks who face injustices from the system, their voices were neglected or not heard. And we wanted to make change so that folks had the opportunity and equality that people without being system impacted had. And with this, some were very successful in their advocacies. We had some passing of legislation, including the Americans with Disabilities Act around the 1990s. And this kind of solidified opportunities for folks with disabilities or folks who were system impacted to now have a chance at getting in the economic system, right? To make money, pay for their families, pay for their services, and to really have a voice within our government, within our economy, and within our communities. So although these are national movements, it really starts with a community, right? A group of people at the ground level or grassroots level coming together with a common goal and amplifying their voices for change in these different levels of systems and governments. And today we now also have been fortunate with some more opportunities of an expansion of the peer workforce, right? So we have peers within different systems, peers within different levels of government, and peers who are not involved in systems and not involved with government, right? Folks just in the community being supportive and helping one another, maybe without even being paid, right? So this is still happening. And although we're grateful for our historical giants, as some might say, or advocates of the past, there's still a lot to do. So just be mindful, and we'll talk more about, what this means, being mindful as we explore our careers and, explore different opportunities relating to the peer workforce. With that, we have the rise of peer credentials, right? So now we have a workforce. Well, what does that mean? That means people can now get paid, right, for doing the advocacy and doing the skill building that was taking place during those times. The peer credentials itself are, as you may be familiar with, or as you're now learning about, this is a training or a series of trainings where folks are accessing skill building opportunities and the education that recognizes lived experience as a tool for recovery. Now this is opening more paid job roles, right? As I mentioned, folks were used to do this volunteer, and there are some people who still do it voluntarily, right? But for folks who are interested in making this a career, now it's possible. And this also opened up accessible accommodations for peers employed in these roles, right? Again, relating to that ADA and relating to other human rights requirements from businesses. And I do want to mention that although the peer credential is required of most employers, right? Meaning you either need to have a credential before you get hired, or during your hiring process and onboarding process, there may be an expectation to receive a credential. However, there are some employers or some opportunities that don't require a credential. And sometimes they solely require having that lived experience, or in some cases, life expertise. So again, we're going to talk a little bit more about that and how to navigate using your lived experience and your credentials when you're exploring your careers. So who does this impact? Right? We're talking about national movements on all levels. We're talking about the rise of a workforce, the rise of solidified credentials and opportunities with these credentials. So not only does this impact persons with lived or living experiences, this impacts the advocates and allies, right, of the movements of all ages and backgrounds. Even now, the peer workforce has expanded to include parents and families, young adults, as well as folks within different systems like the justice system, child welfare system, mental health, and so on. this also is now impacting government affairs, right? There's now opportunities where folks not only are being employed as a peer in different systems, they're also opening doors to welcome more voices and more experiences from peers, right? On both a local, state, and national levels. So this really impacts the whole country, right? And everybody, whether or not you identify as a peer, we're all embracing the consequences, right? In the aftermath of advocates. Okay, so now we're going into some career exploration. Any questions so far or comments that folks want to add about the history? Okay. Again, I'm navigating the chat box here. I'm just reviewing it. Okay, great. And welcome, Anne Marie. Okay. All right, so now career exploration. I want to take some time to kind of talk a little bit about my journey. I am someone with lived experience. I had to navigate the mental health system as a child and now into my young adulthood. And, you know, I was not formally introduced into peer services until I was an undergraduate in college. So I use some icons here to kind of help me guide my journey. So if y'all are wondering, what are these pictures here? They're relating to my experiences as a peer advocate. So I was fresh out of college, confused. I had a lot of mental health crises during my time there. And although some of my school staff were supportive, others really were detrimental to my recovery. And being a first generation college student, I really was conflicted, right? Do I prioritize this achievement that I've worked my whole life for, right? Because as a young person, we only know what we know. We've only lived up until that point in our life. So it was really hard to decide, do I put my health first? Do I put my career first? I don't know how to balance these two things. And even with talking with friends, talking with counselors, talking with, you know, folks in the field, I still didn't have a clear-cut answer. So I had to do my own research, right? A lot of folks are telling me it's okay, like you can finish school later, or you know, you can go on disability, you don't have to work. Other people were saying, no, hide your experiences. Don't tell anybody about what you're going through. It's going to harm you. So again, as a young person trying to navigate this on my own, I was really conflicted. I then started doing my own research. I looked online for local nonprofits that were around my college. I looked for remote opportunities as we were right in the middle of the pandemic when I was graduating from school. And, you know, I was really just, I had so much stress and nerves, I didn't really know what to do. Luckily, I found opportunity in a local nonprofit within the college town that I was living in at the time. And it was the first time I saw on a job application something about having lived experience or having skills that could help navigate the mental health system and community engagement. And I was really shocked. I thought it was a joke at first, right? Like, what do you mean? You know, is this a ploy, right? Like, is this even legal? You know, like these things crossed my mind being a young adult trying to enter the workforce. And fortunately, through, you know, talking with the folks at that agency, talking with my support system, including friends and family, I really felt secure in that decision. And I became a peer advocate. More specifically, I worked as a peer recovery specialist. So I worked with adults 18 over, all ages, all backgrounds. Most of them possibly had dual diagnosis, meaning they're navigating addiction or recovery as well as mental health. And something that really stuck with me was it didn't matter what type of education I had. For this role, it mattered, how am I going to apply my knowledge, right? How am I going to apply my expertise? And they really took a chance by hiring me because, being someone who didn't know anything about the job I was about to go into, I'm really grateful that they took a chance. And it made me fall in love with peer support and fall in love with my community. During a time where I felt so disconnected from people, it gave me opportunity to reconnect. So as we move on here, I led some creative art groups, which was so fun. And I put this image here because, like I said, it was right in the middle of the pandemic. So not only was I navigating entering the workforce, I'm now navigating a global pandemic and worrying about safety and worrying about the safety of those who I'm supporting. Overall, it was a great experience for me. I still talk to those colleagues that I met when I worked there. And honestly, I still very much miss the people who I supported while I was there. It was very hard for me to move on from that job, but I'm grateful because now I'm here where I can say I'm a national advocate, right? So by meeting with people and um, taking risks to open up to different opportunities, I'm now in this point in my life where I not only help folks and talk with folks that live by me, but now I'm doing it on different scales. I've met people from all over the world that do peer support. I've met folks who are great advocates at all levels of government and levels of advocacy. And I would also say I'm now open to a little bit of entrepreneurship and having a sense of independence with what I can do with my career and, make a living out of this work. And, lastly, I put a question mark here because I don't really know what's next for me. And I'm okay with that. I'm 25. And, you know, again, just being transparent, when you're a young person navigating mental health, sometimes you don't vision past 25, right? You don't have a vision past 18 or past that moment that you're experiencing. So I'm very grateful, and I'm really grateful for the people that I've met along the way. Not having a positive mentor, a lot of times folks say that's a bad thing. But in my experience, it's helped me. It's helped me have that urgency to meet people that can be helpful and can teach me things. So I'm grateful for all of this. And I hope that folks can share more of their journeys later on and some words of wisdom that they may have when we do a reflective discussion and kind of talking about, what your career exploration has looked like and if you have words of wisdom for others. So thank you all for listening to this and being a part of my journey. I kind of want to go into some things that I've realized along my journey that I'm hoping I can share with you all today. As I mentioned, we have a few activities. So again, please feel free to engage at the level that you wish. And please, again, feel free to use the chat box if you have any questions or concerns. So again, what have I learned from exploring this workforce of peers and peer roles? I learned that government agencies want to onboard peers, right? Whether that is on a federal, national level, we see peers in SAMHSA, we see peers in appointed roles, we see peers in our government. They may not say they're peers, right? That's something else that I learned, but we can all identify with having lived experience or what it means to be impacted by a system or a service. There's now peer roles for young adults, parents, and caregivers. I mentioned that earlier a little bit, but I just want to recognize those roles again because they are taking place again at all different levels. We have folks working directly in the community, grassroots work. We have folks in regional and statewide roles supporting those organizations providing services. And we also have folks on a national scale, right, amplifying the needs and being agents of change within different realms of government, and not only advocating in the government, but advocating for their community, right? How can we uplift each other and uplift other young people and other parents that support young people in navigating life? And I think that's really beautiful. So both, government and non-government pathways. There's also an increased role or need for research consultants. I'm fortunate right now to be a consultant for a research team. I'm not going to say their names, of course, because it's private, but I just want to share a little about my experience with that. I did not know that medical schools, research committees are looking for folks to share their lived expertise in those settings. I'm involved with a peer-led advisory board that works with a medical school. We advise the research of different providers. We give insight on how they can best engage, right, with marginalized groups or people who are system impacted. And it's really opened my eyes to show that there's great support out there for persons with lived experience. I think a barrier is the language, right? We use the word peer. Other places, they don't use the word peer. So maybe that's something just to think about, right? If you're looking for a different pathway or different opportunity, the word peer may not be used in different settings, right? So just something to keep in mind. As I mentioned, there's peer-led advisory boards. Our state right now, New York State, has a few. There's one that just created, the Youth Mental Health Advisory Board, where they're connecting with teenagers from all around the state, getting their experiences, their calls to action, and trying to implement their voice within state level policy making, as well as with families. They're welcoming parents and caregivers of young people to also share their experience of what it's like. So it's really cool to see that there's a rise of opportunity, and not just doing direct service, but even expanding past that. And there's also, again, I didn't list it here, but we may be familiar, right, with those direct service roles. So youth peer advocate, family peer advocate, certified recovery specialist, peer support specialist, right? And even now justice peers, those are on the rise in this state as well. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about entrepreneurship. For me, I define that as, independently leading your career. So that could look like engaging with one or two of these bullets, or all of them, or none of them, right? And then determining what that looks like for us. What are some benefits and risks? I want to be transparent. There's definitely more than 3. Okay, there's more than 3 for each. But again, this is just based on my journey and some things that I've recognized so far. So some of the risks, which are listed on the right side, unemployment, right? Sometimes it does take leaving a job or an opportunity to open the door for a new one. And I recognize that that is a big risk for a lot of people, myself included, right? I was unemployed when I decided to take on a peer role. Even so, in my peer journey, right, I was unemployed on disability for almost 2 years. And as a young person, what do I do? Right? Like, who would have thought at 20 something years old, I would be in this situation? And, usually growing up, they say, oh, when you get older, I was like, no, this is happening right now. This is not, this is not a later thing for me. So I recognize that that's a big risk. Also conflicts of interest, right? When you begin exploring different opportunities that may be in different states, different counties, different organizations, there may be conflicts of interest that arise. And to define that, that is a business term that usually means, well, who is claiming ownership to this work, right? Are you doing independently? Are you contracted as a full-time employer with one company or agency? Are you doing this part-time? Are you a consultant? Right? So that's kind of where that comes in as well. But staying informed is the best way to tackle that. Knowing your rights and knowing what those terms are before you agree to commit to an opportunity. And then lastly, a risk I would argue is comfort. And with that, I didn't want to say fear, because I think a lot of us are more excited about growth and change than are fearful of it. However, comfort, not wanting to change, right? Not even having fear, sometimes that's a risk. Change does come with taking chances. It does come with talking to strangers, and having to self-advocate along this exploration journey, which is another thing that I learned. Some benefits: higher pay and increased benefits. You know, becoming a full-time employee was really life-changing. I didn't realize I could have different insurances. I didn't realize that, you know, different employers offer different pay and different benefits. So that was something I had to learn, and learn how to, again, self-advocate to negotiate those terms. Another benefit I found was new connections, meeting new people, learning new skills, and then that goes into skill building. So the fun part, just to give everyone a heads up, we do have about 25 minutes. We're going to spend most of that right now doing some of these activities. And then we're going to wrap up, like I said, with a discussion. Any questions so far before we begin our helpful tools here? We have about 3 to go over. Just looking at the chat box for one moment here. Okay. Awesome. So one thing that helped me with my career exploration, and this may seem simple, but it can expand into a really large project, T-charting. This is an activity where folks can brainstorm something that's concerning or something they may be cautious about. And the intention is to write it down, right? A lot of times we have thoughts in our head and become overwhelming. For me, it's always helped to write something down to kind of get it out of my brain for an image. So right now I want to ask folks, and again, you don't have to do this, but I highly encourage folks to engage with this activity. We're going to do some T-charting. This can be done on a cell phone and your notes. This could be done with a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, right? Like this can be done anywhere. I'm just going to read this bullet here. It has some instructions, and then I'll go over the example I have listed on the slide. So in this activity, people will choose one career opportunity they are interested in pursuing. Just one. From there, I will then ask folks to draw the T, right? This looks like 2 columns. Or if you're doing it in your phone and your notes, this could just look like 2 separate sections, right? So you have one section labeling concerns, another section labeling solutions. After you're done doing your chart or filling out your notes, brainstorm one concern that you're having about this career opportunity and write it down. After you write down your concern, pause, focus on that one concern. Then brainstorm 2 solutions. Some people that do this activity, they may say all the solutions, right? But for the sake of time, we're just going to do 2. The goal for this is to always have more solutions than concerns. And sometimes that's not going to happen, but it's better to be prepared, right? This is a tool to help navigate this situation. So I'm going to have some time here for folks to do it. I did give an example on the right-hand side. So I did my T chart in purple. One concern about an opportunity I was thinking of is travel, right? Being in this role, supporting my local community, supporting statewide advocacy efforts, and also engaging in national advocacy efforts, travel has been a really big concern for me. In this example, I also reflected back on when I first started as a peer, right? I did not have a vehicle to get to and from work with this opportunity that was presented to me at that time. So I was concerned about travel. Some things I thought about as a solution, maybe my employer could give me a bus pass, right? I've also seen folks give discounted codes for like Uber and Lyft and different modes of transportation. So that could be a solution, right, to travel. Another solution could be ride sharing or carpooling, right? Riding with other people to and from work or to and from an opportunity. So I wrote these here. And of course, the list can go on, right? Like I said, there's more than just 2 solutions to this. I could also buy a car. I could also not pursue this opportunity because I don't know what to do, right? That's also another solution. So again, I'm just going to leave a few minutes for folks to do this, and then I'm going to leave some time for folks to share some things that they've done. So I'm going to do a time check right now. I'll say about at 1:40, maybe 1:44. What do y'all think? Would y'all like some time to do this? A few more minutes? Are folks done? I'm gonna open up the chat box here and just read it. If folks want to come off mute and share what they wrote down, I highly welcome that as well. So just looking at the chat box here, I see Megan wrote, "That's so cool, Kristen. Thank you for telling us about that." Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here and supporting me. I think transportation is important. Some jobs will not hire you unless you have a license. Yes, that is a reality for various reasons, even if it is a part of your disability. Thank you, Samuel. I think that's a great point, right? Sometimes the concern is not one that's coming from you directly, right? Sometimes it's a concern that comes from the outside or an external concern, such as the employer requiring a license, right? That's a great point. Thank you again, Samuel, for writing that in. So I have about 2 more minutes here. Again, if folks want to share, you could raise your hands. You could type it in the chat box. Okay, and I see a raised hand. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Hey guys, thank you so much, Kristen. This is really informative for me. So looking at this, right, I know your biggest thing, it seems like it was travel. For me, it's administrative work, right? Because it can be a lot sometimes. I worked with one agency and it was, it's pretty much okay. And then I went to another agency and initially it was just a little bit of paperwork, but then it just changed and like they're working on um multiple apps, different platforms, and it's like it's so time consuming that when am I going to get the work done? Like, I mean, the actual work of being a peer, of meeting with people instead of just feeling like the only thing I'm doing all day is paperwork. So, what the solution is for that? I'm going to leave that to the chat. I'm going to leave that to the room, and maybe somebody else can help me with that because I truly don't have answers for the solutions.
Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing that about your experience.
And Crystal, I don't know if I'm doing this right either, but I
you're
put it
doing,
out
listen,
there.
you're doing great. This is what this space is about, right? We're here to support each other. And, sometimes it takes courage to share a concern, right? Or something that we're experiencing. So I think that's great leadership that you're doing. And I want to reiterate what Stephanie said. Let's open it to the floor. Does anybody have any suggestions? Just to repeat what was said, there's some concerns about balancing administrative work and also doing the direct care and the direct service. So again, I open the floor. If anyone has any suggestions, you can also write them in the chat box.
I have a question. Is there a certain number of hours of contact with clients or people that you're speaking to that you have per week?
Yes. Was that question towards me? I'm sorry. Yeah, so it's generally 20 hours of 20 billable hours of one-on-one contact with clients is usually what it is. I found that wherever I go. So
I just wanted to say that, so once you have created a schedule for a week, certainly other appointments may come up, but then that allows you to organize the time that you use to do paperwork around the face-to-face appointments that you have.
And
That's
that's
one idea.
and that's a great idea. I thank you so much for that. I guess I left out a little part. I see my clients in person, so travel time
Mhm,
is essential. I work in all 5 boroughs, including
mhm,
Long Island. So
mhm.
sometimes I am on the road a lot. So still trying to get my billable hours in with the clients and then trying to get that paperwork done. It's
And that's
challenging
and that
sometimes.
would be including your travel time as well. I mean, because that's certainly part of having the appointment is the travel time. So whatever time is around that, there's a lot of, I mean, you could just use there's different apps that you could use to, while you're driving, you could be talking and making up a note through talking while you're driving. Say as you're returning from an appointment. And then that way you would have it on your phone and then you can print it out and then make, edit.
That's a good thing. I'll try it. But no,
Mhm.
but someone with my personality during my travel time, I'm also on the phone with another client. So that's additional notes I have to put in later in the day. But I think it just may be a personal thing, a matter of time management versus,
I was getting ready to say time management and
yeah,
also boundaries as well.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I would just like to add, hi, Kristen. Nice seeing you. I had that actual problem too when I was engaging with a lot of clients, a lot of participants, and I found that it was easy to set up 2 to 3 hours before actually going into the field and meeting participants to just focus on the notes and like the treatment planning. So like that time management, I guess I used to put it as notes and admin work first in the mornings for the notes that from the day prior. And then once I get that done, then I go out in the field and meet the participants to then do it all over again.
Okay, that's worth a shot. It's worth a shot. And thank you so much, Katie. I see you're maybe try to have a designated documentation admin day if possible. Yeah, like I thought that was a great idea, right? Until I found out that, the notes really have to be in within 24 hours. And it's like, oh God. So if I start at 8, I'm leaving to drive to Brooklyn, an hour and a half. I get there, I'm seeing clients. My last client I see, say 3:30, 4 o'clock. It's a 2-hour visit. I'm headed home. I get back home at 6 p.m. I don't want to write a note at 6 o'clock. And besides the fact, I'm off the clock. So
Mhm.
it's trying to find that balance. I'm gonna find it. I'm listening to you guys. I'm gonna try to implement some of this stuff. Thank you so much for Shandy, Miss
Mhm.
Speller. Thank you so
Mhm.
much.
Shandi.
Shandi. So and once again, thank you, Kristen. I'm not going to monopolize any more time because I feel like I may be healed at this point. So I'm just
This space is all of ours, Stephanie. So thank you. And thank you everyone for being so supportive here. I really love the discussions,
Yeah.
not only verbally right now, but I'm also looking at the chat box here and there's some more supportive stuff in here as well. This is great. We have some time for maybe one or two more. Folks want to share what they wrote, or if they have questions. Feel free to raise your hands or even write it in the chat box. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for engaging in this activity. I really hope that this T-charting skill will be helpful after today. And also keep in mind that you can get creative with this, right? Like I said, for the sake of time, we only did one concern and two solutions, but this could be a long, endless list, right? And one thing I would recommend is for each opportunity you're interested in, do a T-chart for each of those, right? They may share concerns and may share solutions, but the approach may be different, right? If you're looking to do a community job, a direct service role, that may come with specific concerns and solutions versus volunteering, right? At a remote opportunity, that may also come with its own set of concerns and solutions. So I would highly recommend doing this. And then also you could do like costs and benefits. What's the benefit of this opportunity versus what's something I may have to give up or put in extra time or energy into. So again, great stuff. Thank you everyone for being supportive and for sharing your wisdom. I'm going to move on to our next tool here. Networking. This was a very powerful skill and tool that helped me with the opportunities that I'm involved with. I learned about a lot of the things I do from other people, from colleagues sending me an application, from seeing a flyer on LinkedIn or on a social media page, or even just doing my own research, right? Looking on Google or looking at Instagram pages of what people are posting. So strengthening our networks, especially with folks that we have professional relationships with. So I'm going to ask for folks here, if you can, and you don't have to do it, but please share your contact information. Throw in an email, throw in your work phone number, and not only do that in this chat box with your own information, make sure you jot down someone else's, right? Collect other people's contact information. This is really helpful for expanding our professional relationships, which then come with opportunities. And not only for ourselves, but even for the folks that we work with or the folks that we support. Maybe they're interested in the opportunity, and maybe you yourself are too busy, or maybe don't have, right, like there may be some barriers that we don't have solutions for, but someone else may be able to come up with that solution, right, for their own advocacy and wellness journeys. And I also encourage folks, even after today, go check out that virtual directory, the N.A.P.S and N.A.P.S. They have an online directory with people's contact information, with where they work, right, around the state, and their different specialties. So maybe you're in one specialty working in recovery and you want to get more involved with juvenile justice, or vice versa, right? Maybe there's another field you want to learn more about before you engage, right? And that's one thing that our network connections can help us with, give us some insight before we make a commitment. And like I said, fortunate we do have that virtual directory with N.A.P.S. So even if you don't exchange contact information today, there's always something to refer back to after today's meeting. And our last helpful tool, self-care. Now, this may seem out of place, but as someone navigating, living recovery, living experiences, self-care is number one. There's a lot of feelings, emotions, and stress that comes with career exploration. We don't know what that agency's culture is like. We don't know if this opportunity is going to be more time consuming than my last opportunity, right? These are things to be mindful of. So establishing and maintaining habits that prioritize your wellness and your health, physical and mental. And be kind to yourself, right? Whether or not you get the opportunity, you still applied and you still did it, right? Think of that younger version of yourself, or that person in the past who would have never thought that you could be here and to take these steps. Be kind and be mindful of things that both can help you and harm you, right? And keep in mind that self-care journey is individual. So it's okay to do something different than somebody else. It's also okay to share a habit or share a mindset. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. I did have a few reflection questions here. I'm going to just read them aloud. If folks want to answer them, you're more than welcome to. You can use the chat feature or come off mute. And just one other reminder that after today, you will receive, the slideshows and you'll have access to the recording. And there is a quiz, a 5-question quiz related to this training. And Casey, if you have any questions or concerns, please connect with Casey Carpenter, and they will also put their contact information in the chat. So again, just to wrap things up, think about a time when you were first interested in exploring peer roles for employment. Some folks here today just said they're in that journey, right? And we have some seasoned advocates as well who are trying to navigate those next steps. What were some things that excited you? What were some things that you were cautious about? Based on your experiences, what advice would you give to yourself back then? Or right now, right? If that's that situation for you. And then lastly, based on your experiences, what advice would you give to others who are interested in peer roles? I'm going to mute myself for the last few minutes. Please feel free to share, address any of these questions aloud or in the chat. And I just really want to appreciate and thank everyone for spending your time here today. It was really lovely interacting with everyone here. And again, thank you so much for supporting the peer movement.